Jesus.
Hey, friends, you're watching Behind the Scenes Divine Intimacy Radio, and you're not going to miss a show today. Well, you might actually. You're not going to want to miss the show today. We're going to be talking with Jason Craig from North Carolina and Lessons from the Storm, which I'm pretty excited to talk with Jason about. He wrote an absolutely incredible article about his experiences. We'll link that in the show notes. Before we jump into that, November 16th, Spiritual Warfare and Discernment of Spirit. Stephanie and I will be in San Antonio, Texas. We only have 20 seats left. 20 seats left. November 16th, San Antonio, Texas. You can go to SpiritualDirection.com /events to check that out. And we're all full up in the Divine Intimacy Marriage in Trinidad. That's packed out.
Yep.
I don't know if we filled up the Spiritual Warfare Discernment of Spirits there yet. Do you know?
I don't know, but if you're in Trinidad, come see us.
As long as there's no hurricane blowing through there. I was just watching.
No. God forbid.
We're against hurricanes, just in case you're wondering. And the last thing I'll tell you before we jump into the show, although when is the next marriage retreat? It's in Bismarck, North Dakota.
And it is on Valentine's weekend.
In next year.
Next year.
2025.
Yep. And so if you want big points, this could be a Christmas Valentine's twofer gift.
We just lost the studio over here.
Oh.
Can folks still hear us online? Okay.
So February 14th through the 16th, 2025 is our next marriage retreat in Bismarck, North Dakota. So, gentlemen, that's a great Christmas.
You know you're crossing boundaries right now.
Why?
Women are not allowed to talk about points. That's a secret. That's a man's secret.
Okay, well, so yeah, whatever. But we know, like, y'all can wink at each other and go, points, whatever. We know, like, women, we've got our spidey sense.
Think you know.
We know.
We have a whole
lot.
secret language.
No, we know a lot. So anyway, if you want to really bless your wife,
okay, that's better. I was going to use like a buzzer noise.
Okay, so if you want to bless your wife, and you want her to make kind of one of those little sighs, when she opens the gift, and you see her like light up and be surprised, and you want to shock her a little bit because maybe she hasn't seen this side of you in a long time. I would suggest that you go out to SpiritualDirection.com /events and that you sign up for the marriage retreat in Bismarck, North Dakota. I know it's cold, but there you can wear a coat. You can wear sweaters. You can think fall colors or winter colors.
Yes.
Whatever. Anyway, you'll get over it because you'll be inside thinking warm things, warm thoughts, and doing your marriage a ton of good.
Print it because Christmas is coming, right? You want to just fix your shopping.
Print it, roll it up,
put a bow on it,
put a red bow around it and a pink bow, and it's a 2-for-1.
Don't do pink bows.
Listen, it's a Christmas – Valentine's Day gift.
There you go. Okay.
You got it done.
Well, I think we better do the show because otherwise we'll run out of time. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
On your mark, get set, go. This is Dan and Stephanie Burke. Welcome to Divine Intimacy Radio, your radio haven of rest,
your hermitage of the heart,
your monastery of the mind, where we lift our hearts and minds to heaven to draw upon the wisdom of the saints to help us navigate the storms of life. And today we're talking about storms.
A real storm.
I mean, not just a small one either.
A huge storm.
A huge storm.
Historic, right?
Historic. And we're talking to Mr. Jason Craig. Why don't you introduce him?
Okay. Jason Craig writes from a small dairy farm in western North Carolina, Polk County. He is the co-founder of Fraternus. This is
we messing this up?
This is spelled wrong. Founding editor of Sword and Spade magazine and author of Leaving Boyhood Behind: The Traditional Virtues According to St. Thomas Aquinas and Liturgy of the Land, which I love that last title.
I like that title.
I love that title.
Yeah, Kyle
he holds a master's degree from the Augustine Institute and is known to claim his family invented bourbon.
So what's this
Well,
claim about, Jason, this bourbon thing?
I really need to rethink the bio that I give
Yeah.
people, because that's how it ends, which is how every interview begins. Therefore, especially with men.
It's great to have you on the show. Let's talk about alcohol.
That's right. Well, I'll give the short story is that my aunt was doing some digging and found out that we are, in fact, descended from Elijah Craig, who, if you've ever noted the bourbon aisle, that's a good, top to mid shelf bourbon. And the stories vary, but he apparently was an illegal Baptist preacher back when you had, I think in Virginia, when you had to be licensed to preach, in the so-called land of the religious freedom. And he was not licensed. And along with being a Baptist preacher, he also made some bourbon in some burnt barrels.
See, that's a contradiction. The Baptist bourbon. So, but I can help you with your bio. Just add this one line. And he is grateful to be Catholic.
And he is grateful to be Catholic. I am grateful.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, it's great. I'm grateful to have you on the show. The reason you're on the show, of course, is you're in the midst of the storm still, if you will, or the cleanup of the terrible situation that happened in North Carolina. And I read an article of yours in Sword and Spade magazine. You are an exceptional writer, I will say, by the way.
Thank you.
And was deeply moved by the piece and really resonated with it. We live in a rural area and really are, I wouldn't call us preppers, but we'd like to eventually be totally self-sufficient, even though that's very difficult to do. But the thing that drew me to what you wrote about is more macro societal themes related to the storm, recovery from the storm, and that sort of thing. So let's just begin. Where are you in relationship to the worst situation in North Carolina?
Sure. I'm in Polk County, so we are a part of the declared disaster zone. But I am what we say down the hill. Like, I'm very much in the foothills. So the northern, kind of northwest part of my county is where Lake Lure was. If some people have been watching the news, that's one of the famous places because of the potential dam break. And we did get the text alert to evacuate because the dam was breaking, which really freaked my wife out. Although we were not actually in the where that path would have been. Although we used to live there. So that my direct area was hit very hard when we left the morning of the storm. My neighbor and I, who's also a Catholic and farmer, and we had thought the night before maybe we should go get some gas, which we didn't. And because we thought nobody was taking the storm seriously. Nobody was taking it seriously.
Is this a mountain people thing?
Yeah. I mean, we get it all the time. Oh, there's a hurricane coming, but hurricanes lose strength as soon as they hit land, and we're in the mountains, so there's no way it's going to have that much, oomph to it. And I've lived in Florida. I'm from North Carolina, but I've lived on the coast. I've lived in Florida. I've been through hurricanes, and so that even for myself, it's just and actually my neighbor is from Louisiana. We were just not taking it seriously. But the next morning we drove out and we could not find a passable road for hours, and we had to go to get to the next city that had power. We had to go way south. It took me about 2 hours to get 20 minutes away. But that was the extent. Here was just trees and power lines. I am not in the area other than a few select places around here. I'm not where the massive flooding was. Around Asheville, but just north of us is Chimney Rock. I mean, Chimney Rock is just north of us is where that entire town washed away. So we, although we were just with the whole region, we were just knocked out. I mean, when it came to cell service, the internet, obviously power, it wasn't just that the power went out. It was we really actually got severed. I imagine you and other people knew more about the storm than we did for quite some time.
Interesting, because so you're isolated, no power, you don't know how severe it is. It's interesting to me too. You're thinking, oh, we're in the mountains. How could a hurricane affect us? I totally get the logic, right? Yes, it'll be a storm, but you always think, well, the mountains and the trees will slow down all the wind, and that's actually true unless you have a storm of the century that just blows through all of that.
What hit just the force that it was able to gain, as basically hit with as much force where it came onto land was basically A to B, the closest it could get, which would still not be problematic, except for the storm was just moving so fast that it just got here with a lot. And I mean, we were, it was really Friday morning. We were just watching, trees fall down and wind blowing, thinking to myself, this is, I can't believe this is happening. We were out in the storm trying to do things with some of the animals, and I remember yelling some choice words at my son. I said, get out from under the trees, stop standing under the trees. But the other reason it was so hard is that we had like 2 or 3 days of rain beforehand. So the soil was nice and loose. The soil was nice and moist, just ready. And then the winds and the extra rain just devastated. I mean, there was places we drove where there was more, power lines on the ground than up. It was just amazing.
So just a pause that needs to be edited out. I just realized we didn't turn on the clock. How much time do we have, Jordan?
Roughly 11 minutes since we went live. So minus the
intro. Okay.
Just go to
just tell us when to stop for this segment. You keep track. You have to help. There's no other way. Otherwise, we won't be able to pay attention to the guest. All right. So,
Jason, what I read your article. Beautiful writing, and I have to say some really incredible realizations of some connections to some spiritual truths, and what you've all been going through there in Polk County, and the mountain people struggling through all of this. I think we're going to take a break shortly. Yeah. And what I'd like to do is move into that and get your take on some of these things that led you to go a little deeper with what's happening, what people are suffering, and the connection to maybe our overdependence on technology, whatever it is, and how we need to get back to our roots. Okay.
Sounds good.
So before we go to break, I want to tell our audience, just to give you a little reminder. Oh, we have 8 minutes. All right.
Oh, that's different.
We're totally, Jason, we're totally messed up here. Our editor is just going to have a field day because of we for some reason didn't turn on the clock. What a small disaster. So let's redo.
Why don't we do that? Because
let's just do this. So
because it's
just not going to work. Yeah. Jordan, put it on 8 minutes. This is why we have a producer. We're testing his patience.
Keep going. I'll give you.
No, I can't. It's not going to work that way. It's too distracting, and I didn't realize we had so much time. We're testing the producer's patience today. This is why it's called.
Apparently, he prayed for patience this morning.
He must have. This is why he is a very holy guy. This is why it's called divine. This is why it's called behind the scenes, because when sometimes in recorded radio, people don't realize how messed up things can get. Okay. All right. So what I want to do when we head back in is I want to ask, because I like to try to do 2 shows. So some specific detail on the, so let me set it up and then we'll go.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, go for it.
On your mark, get set, go. So Jason, tell me, once the storm passed in terms of its intensity, when did you start venturing out to see how your neighbors were and that sort of thing?
Well, we actually, it was pretty immediate, and it was a need. It was need that drove us out. First of all, the neighbor right next to me, adjacent to me, is a fellow Catholic, somebody I met through Fraternus. He moved here, kind of a conversion to an agrarian. He was a banker. Now he's a butcher, and he has a butcher shop.
Banker to butcher. Okay. That makes sense.
And he, that's right. And he, had cows hanging in the freezer, and his generator, the air,
Oh.
he needed some gas. And like
Right.
I said, we did not take this seriously. So although he had a backup generator, we didn't have gas and to run very long. And I mean, we had a little bit, but and then I have a dairy. So immediately those two things become immediately important because
Right.
the dairy we have, we probably had 25 gallons of milk that we wanted to keep cold because we thought, hey, we might need this for a while.
Yeah.
So I have a generator too without a lot of gas. So as far as venturing out, we went out, I mean, within an hour of the storm being done, I guess, passing.
Oh, being done. Okay.
Yeah, once it was sort of over, we went out. So that was really like the first thing that we started doing. And then the family, I mean, we kicked it into gear pretty quickly. We got out the propane heaters and we got out the fat. This is, I don't know which details you're interested in, but we have a farm, so we store a lot of fat, which we render into fats, so that we can use for cooking. And I told the kids, let's render the fat because we might be cooking outside on fire for a long time, which is fine, but we're going to need some more fats to keep doing that because if we can't wash dishes easily or don't have hot water, then you want to have a good layer of fat on the cast iron so nothing sticks. It's easy to wipe out. So anyway, they were doing that. We were just gathering stuff. We went and got a propane cooker for another neighbor, got that to them. And then we went out, and it took us probably 4 hours to get back.
4 hours. So how long would it just to get gas? Is that what you were looking for?
Oh yeah. I mean, it was less, we're 25 minutes to a gas station, but it took us to the gas station we found. But we went out and we found people already cutting. The neighbor, I mean, it was immediate that, in the country, when something happens, people don't wait around for help
for somebody else to solve it.
Yeah, they just start. So the chainsaws were just revving up all over. It was just like a chorus. So every direction we went, we found someone that was either stuck, and so we did pull somebody out, or people were cutting out. We were just seeing if we could move some branches and help them. And then we actually got to the gas. Just to put it in perspective, if you're watching the news, the gas shortages, the gas was running out wide open because everyone was going to the only places where they could find power. Well, the way, I guess, I don't know what it's called with gas, but the grid of gas is laid out. There's singular gas stations can't carry an entire region. So we got there, to put in perspective, in enough time to be able to my neighbor bought a gas can, which became like gold. And we filled up a bunch of gas and came home. And I'm pretty sure it's all kind of a blur now. I mean, by that evening, we did end up, we checked on all the neighbors right around us, just to make sure they were all, and it was funny, the different degrees of preparedness or concern or freaking out, that different people were having. But, we had one neighbor who was delusional. He was just, the power, it'll be back on by tomorrow. It'll be back on by tonight, probably. And I kept telling him, I said, listen, man, I've been out. It is not coming back on for a while. Yeah. And he just would not believe that. And then,
probably more from the city or what?
No, actually, I mean, he's out in the country. Everyone who's out in the country is not a lot of them live like you do in the city or the suburbs, they drive farther to the grocery store.
Oh, interesting.
But no, they actually stay inside. This household is closest to me. They stay inside and I play video games pretty much full time. It seems like I never see them ever. And that I mentioned him in the article, but then he was at my house 2-3 times a day, or at the barn when we were milking. He'd come out and just stand there. And by the end of it, he was actually asking, "Can I learn how to milk cows with you?" And it was kind of what?
Might be a major changing point or turning point in his life, we would hope, right?
It could have been, except now the power's back on. I haven't seen him since.
Oh, no. In your article, you said something that was shocking to me. Like, it was actually really incredibly shocking and disheartening to me, was what happened at the grocery stores. Mm-hmm. Can you share with that?
Yeah. I didn't even put this in the article, but just a little backdrop of Catholic teaching, Catholic social teaching, that in time of disaster, not only does our faith tell us to love your neighbor, which means practically take care of them, right? The book of James is very clear. Loving your neighbor doesn't, that means giving them food and clothing, things they need. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean just well-wishing. And then in a time of disaster, as the common destination of all goods, meaning you have to use things that are to keep people alive, the sort of certain things that are artificial constructs, meaning constructs of man, they dissolve away in the case of an emergency, right? There's all sorts of things like in an emergency, just like who can baptize, in an emergency, or in an emergency, you feed people that don't have food. And there was a large corporate chain that was not letting anyone. Well, there was one that had two of them, same chain. One of them had power. They were the ones that were like 2-hour drive for me. They had power, but they could not use cash. Something about the systems were down.
Wow.
And they could not use cash.
Think about that.
And they just, in that moment of great need and disaster, they had real things and we had real money, which in legal tender in our country, that's how we get goods, right? Or how we used to. And definitely made me rethink this whole move away from cash thing. But they couldn't do it because the computer couldn't do it for them. And then I guess they didn't have like calculators or notepads to do the amazingly complicated thing.
Or brains.
No, I think they were probably forbidden. I think the standard operating procedure did not allow them to do that. And then another store of the same chain, it was very clear. All the power was out. So all these goods that could have been used, eaten, given away were left to rot and thrown away. I couldn't even get them to feed pigs because it was very because they can get loss of product insurance on these goods, right? They have insurance. These stores aren't stupid. They have insurance. And it was one of those moments where I recognized, one of my favorite authors, Wendell Berry, says there is no, and he's not condemning industrialism necessarily with this. He's just saying we just have to acknowledge the fact that there's not an internal logic of industrialism that loves its neighbor.
Yeah, let's pause there. Okay. And we're going to go to a break. When we come back, I want to just continue on with Stephanie's question about what happened at the grocery store. I mean, what you're revealing already is very powerful, and things that we ought to be, all Catholics ought to be thinking about in terms of, natural disasters, but also political disasters, which could very likely overtake us in the next, in the very near term. So we'll be right back with Jason Craig and how to endure in the midst of a storm.
We'll be right back.
All right. No, I don't. Putting our producer, he's earning his keep today. Not that he doesn't ever, but was that 12 and a half?
It was as close as I can calculate.
Okay, but it wasn't 13 is all I'm asking. Who knows? Just leave me alone.
There was enough, banter back and forth there that I think they can bring it down to 12.
Maggie's going to be very busy.
That's okay.
All right. So before we jump back into the show, I want to just tell you about a course, the Avila Institute, Introduction to St. Teresa of Avila. If you want to know one of the greatest saints and doctors of the church, in particular with respect to what it means to come to know the Lord and to pray, Dr. Alphonsus Pinto. And this is a School of Spiritual Formation course. So go to avila-institute.org to check that out. All right. We're going to go back on your mark, get set, go. Welcome back. This is Divine Intimacy Radio, and you're listening to Dan and Stephanie Burke and Jason Craig, the co-founder of Fraternus and founding editor of Sword and Spade magazine, author of Leaving Boyhood Behind. We're talking about his, he wrote an incredible article for Sword and Spade, which we will link in the bottom of the YouTube video that this will produce out at SpiritualDirection.com, where he described his experiences and some very powerful, insights regarding dealing with this storm in North Carolina. Jason, you were answering Stephanie's question about the grocery store and gave us a little bit of a backdrop of stores that were had goods and that because of silly policies.
Well, insurance, money, greed. Let's just put it out there, right?
He doesn't have to say it. We can say it.
Because one store, so to set it up for those that are returning, one store has power, has their systems up, but they can't process cash.
Can't, in quotes, right?
Yeah. They're not allowed to, and they're not allowed to. So if you're standing there with money, and cash money in your hand, they're not going to let you buy the water. Very things they're not going to let you buy baby formula for your child.
That's
right. Or whatever.
There's some
right?
powerful stuff.
And then another store, same chain, there's no power.
Yeah.
And rather than let people have it, so that they can survive and take care of their kids and each other or whatever, they're going to let the stuff rot on the shelves, in the freezers, in the fridge. So it's just going to rot. You can't even feed it to your livestock. Is that right, Jason?
Yeah. And I guess I want to be careful to defend, the people in the stores. I think what it actually shows is partly the greed and ridiculous, someone who's at making a standard operating procedure at a long distance is, they're making these decisions with liability in mind, with profitability in mind, all sorts of things that just in the moment and in the actual place, to be ridiculous. But I bet if we had them on, they'd be able to defend it. And we go, okay, I kind of see the logic of it, which part of my reflection was like there is a distancing of just humanity and normal human interactions that's occurring in our world, which I was referring to sort of this machine of things. And there might have been other places where this chain, somebody just said, well, whatever, I'm giving away this or that. I don't know. But those two experiences of just seeing this barrier that was created unnecessarily between resources and people made me, just one of those moments where I was very grateful. I mean, we have maybe a significantly different way of life where we do have produce a lot of our own food, and then have neighbors that produce food that we never felt like we were going to be hungry. But it was once the news started coming in, so we didn't have we didn't know what was going on. I mean, we just had some people texting us saying, hey, it looks like this is going to get worse before it gets better. And we thought, wow, is this going to be a month, without these stores? We didn't know. But it just showed it was a startling wake up call to sort of the way things are that seem quite normal until they're not. And then it becomes, and this was in comparison to small local stores that were perfectly capable and able and willing and eager and alive to help serve and take care of each other.
Yes. Right, for IOUs. And you said, and there's no doubt these are going to be made good on. Oh, which I just love that because without the machine, in quotes, taking over things or ruling things or becoming, which was interesting, almost like an antichrist, I think is how you referred to it. Without the machine, we go back to human values, to these core values of love your neighbor, right, as yourself, provide, take care of each other. And we've lost so much of that in our country, and I think in our world, right?
Yeah, I think so. In the article, I quote Paul Kingsforth, who, in his project, he's sort of that he's been writing on for a couple of years, describing what I think a lot of people have described. I mean, I've read writings from Joseph Ratzinger, very similar, where they connect other Wendell Berry's and lots of people have just noted that the spirit of the machine, like what is the spirit of the machine? And obviously it's not a spirit. It is a completely functional thing made by man. What Paul Kingsforth says is that it is, he thinks that the project of modernity is to replace nature with the machine and God with man, right? Which is this complete construct of man. Joseph Pieper talked a lot about this and his works on virtue and leisure and things like that. And this is why it's such a subtle snare that I do think is very clearly connected to the Antichrist. I know, and I try to not sound dismissively crazy in the article, but in Revelation, it's very clear what the Antichrist does is essentially remove our identity as children of God, remove our connection and care for one another, mass us together into one giant block, And he does this by primarily by controlling what we buy and sell, and how we buy and sell, and by what means. So the sort of strange homogenization of weird ideologies, hyper technocratic, bureaucratic, um, uh, and intentionally secular, dehumanizing sort of world of like the global financial thing that's all around us. It's kind of hard to have a name for it, but I think the machine is a good name. I think it is safe to say it's clearly a part of the spirit of the Antichrist. And one of the ways it does that is by actually providing for our needs, which is what it does. It makes it hard to condemn. People, well, you're criticizing the very machine that's going to bring you that gas you were going out into. Like, but again, tyrants, what I say in the article, tyrants give you what you need, right? They don't take away things and keep their tyranny very easily. But what the spirit of the machine actually lifts us off of the ground, away from our neighbor, but still it also pushes us down away from God, and puts us on this plane where we're really not connected to either one of those things. And it was just amazing to me how fast humanity revved into being when what I think a lot of our connection to this machine went down. I'm going to be careful. I'm not necessarily just condemning all electricity or all technology. Sometimes people will not be able to understand this line of reasoning and argumentation because they think, well, I really like air conditioning. It sounds like although John Senior called our era the air conditioned Holocaust, but the world of artificiality has displaced God and our neighbor, and we don't live for one another. And it makes the gospel very abstracted from, I think, the amazing practicality that is so obvious in the gospel. Things like love your neighbor are not a hard thing to discern. I don't know if you have a class on that, but you probably don't need one. It's so simple.
It reminds me, like, what happened to the community reminds me a bit of what the New Testament describes in the second chapter of Acts, where you have, of course, this severe persecution, but then, of course, the massive I don't want to say conversion, because that's a sort of a gentilized way of looking at the New Testament, but a massive acknowledgement of Jesus as the Messiah, so then this reality is growing. And then you have people who are given their entire lives to this reality, and in so doing shifting to a radical way of living, a different way of living that changed the economic environment such that they needed to be dependent on one another for everyone as a whole to survive. And in a sense, the storm, and this is what you wrote about in the article, forced you and many others into that very kind of reality. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I mean, that any sort of technological advancement, we presume it's just making something we're already doing easier. But in a lot of cases, it's filling a need in some other way that we didn't, that we used to fill it in a different way. And community is not formed by being social with one another. That's an error that a lot of us because we're so saturated consumerism. When someone hears localism or love your neighbor, we typically think it's some sort of purchase, ethical purchase or something. But community is actually built by solving problems together. And I got that quote from Robert Nisbet, his, The Quest for Community, a great book, kind of classical conservative book. That when we lose our practical need for one another, like our economic interactions, our care for one another, our sharing of necessary things, which, by the way, can include, the necessity of love and care. But when we lose the functional bonds of needing one another, community becomes almost impossible. I think actually by solving all of it, this is the reason we talk about insurance. People laugh at the Amish, but do you know why the Amish don't have insurance and they refuse to have insurance? Is that, well, if we have insurance, then we won't need each other.
Wow.
So, we had a disaster one time. Yeah, because by having insurance, so we had a barn burn down one time, and all my friends at church like, oh, we should have a barn raising. I was like, well, there's two problems in having a barn raising. One, you don't know how to build a barn, and two, I have insurance, which means I don't need you. I have replaced you with insurance. So now, which of us though is bold enough to cancel his insurance, and rely on his neighbor? Right. But this all the sudden, that's a hard, those are hard steps to take. But when it all gets stripped away through a storm, well, you're gonna go across the street and make sure people are okay. Then ask them if they have this, or they're gonna ask if you have that. And there's a lady who just moved here and she came across the street. She said, "I really need some milk." And it's like, hey, those cows that you drive by, they actually have milk. We can get it out for you. Like we can.
Those cows, those animals make that. We know how to get it from them.
They are lactating mammals. That's where milk comes from. Yeah.
Well, listen, we want to, are you okay staying on another segment with us?
Sure.
Great. Well, this has been a great conversation with Jason Craig. He's written a very powerful article about his experience in the North Carolina storm and working with his neighbors and the insights that he gained from that. He is the co-founder of Fraternus, which everyone ought to look up, Fraternus. It's a great organization. We'll talk a little bit more about that in the next show. Sword and Spade magazine, and the author of Leaving Boyhood Behind. If you want to continue to understand a perspective regarding how to live life so that you can know what it means to have true community. And by the way, if you don't know true community, I would argue you might not know God very well. And that's just something maybe we can explore in our next show. So thank you for being with us, Jason, and for hanging out with us for another show. And with that,
until next time, may the God of peace make you perfect in holiness. May he preserve you whole and entire, spirit, soul, and body, irreproachable at the coming of our Lord, Jesus Christ.
For all of you guys out on EWTN's Facebook page, if you want to catch the next show, pop out to SpiritualDirection.com YouTube page, and you'll see us live streaming out there. Okay, God bless.